Augustus Frederick, later Duke of Sussex, never expected trouble to find him on a warm spring evening in Rome, yet that is exactly how his life changed course. He was 19, the spare's spare in a sprawling Georgian dynasty, restless but naive, a tall young man with a thatch of reddish gold hair that drew comparison to his elder brother, the Prince of Wales. Italy was meant to polish his manners, improve his fragile health, and keep him safely away from London intrigues. Instead, he spotted a woman bending to fasten a loosened shoe buckle on a narrow street near the Piazza di Spagna, and one glance fixed him. Before we get started, if you want to support the channel and find all my links in one place, just scan the QR code on screen. It'll take you to Patreon, my social media, and even my books. Everything's there. Now don't worry if you missed the code now, I'll show it again at the end of the video. So thanks for your support. Now let's get into this week's story. The woman was Lady Augusta Murray, 32 years old, dark-eyed and self-possessed, and crucially free of illusions about the world. She had been raised in privilege as the daughter of John Murray, the 4th Earl of Dunmore, the last royal governor of New York. Her childhood straddled the Atlantic. She spent the tense months before the American Revolution in Virginia, listening to her father debate policy with George Washington, absorbing the frank talk of soldiers and planters. War uprooted her family, but it also broadened her outlook. By the time she returned to Britain, she understood how power worked and how fragile reputation could be. Rome in 1793 was crowded with aristocrats on the Grand Tour, painters lugging easels to the Forum, French emigrants escaping the guillotine, and English clergymen scribbling in journals. Lady Augusta moved easily through those circles. She spoke Italian with a crisp accent, quoted Horace at dinner, and wore the latest London silks, but draped them with Roman scarves. She seemed dazzling to Augustus, fresh from Windsor classrooms and still chafing against his father's strict rules. Their first conversation was polite, remarks about Vivaldi and the sunset, but they soon met daily. Augustus hired carriages to ride beyond the city walls to the aqueducts at dawn, where poppies brushed her skirts, and he tried halting Latin phrases to impress her. Contemporaries argued later about who did the chasing. Some said Augusta set the trap, others insisted the teenager pursued her with puppy dog intensity. The truth sat somewhere in between, an inexperienced prince longing for freedom and a worldly woman who enjoyed being adored. Augustus's letters from that time survive in fragments. He called her "my dearest Goosey," a pet name that startled even his indulgent friends. He confessed that his life held no purpose except to see your eyes open in the morning. Such fervour worried the advisors travelling with him, but the pair ignored warnings. That spring, they learned of the Royal Marriages Act of 1772. It stated that any descendant of George II must secure the sovereign's written consent before marrying, otherwise the union would be legally void. The law existed precisely to prevent mismatches with commoners, Catholics, divorcees, or anyone who might embarrass the crown. Augusta ticked several disqualifying boxes. She was no virgin. She had broken off an understanding with her cousin Lord Archibald Hamilton only months earlier, and she was not a princess. And worst of all, whispers claimed she still nursed feelings for Hamilton. Augustus knew all this, yet he pressed ahead. On the 4th of April 1793, the couple slipped into a small English-language chapel inside the Palazzo Doria Pamphili. Unaware of the groom's identity, the officiating clergyman recorded the bride and groom as Augustus Frederick and Augusta Murray, omitting titles. Two friends signed as witnesses, their pens trembling at the risk. For a moment the lovers felt triumphant. They spent evenings in a rented apartment overlooking the Tiber, dreaming of a quiet country estate back in England, but reality followed fast. News reached Windsor that the king's sixth son had married, in flagrant defiance of the act. George III flew into one of the rages that punctuated his later years. Couriers carrying terse orders met the newlyweds in Florence and returned them home immediately. They obeyed, though reluctantly, and reached London in December. Still determined to legitimise the bond, they arranged a second wedding on the 5th of December 1793 at St George's, Hanover Square, this time under false names. Augustus called himself Augustus Frederick again, but added an invented residence. Augusta became Augusta Dunmore. At the time, she was 8 months pregnant and barely able to stand through the brief service. At the time, London society was always alert to scandal and began to chatter. Caricaturists drew the prince cradling a gigantic bonnet labelled Ambition. 6 weeks later, on 13th of January 1794, Augusta gave birth to a son named Augustus Frederick de Albany. Nurses whispered that the baby carried both parents' fiery hair, but the Privy Council acted faster than the midwives. On the 14th of March 1794, both marriages were declared null and void. Augusta, it ruled, was not entitled to the style of Her Royal Highness, and the king made sure his proclamations reached every newspaper. Augustus pleaded, wept, and finally capitulated. He was ordered back to the continent, officially for health, and unofficially for punishment. In Naples, he rented rooms near the Royal Opera House, where he met the soprano Giuseppina Grassi. Their liaison lasted almost 2 years and filled London gossip columns whenever news was scarce. Meanwhile, Augusta left with an infant and dwindling funds, moving between modest lodgings in Westminster and visiting her widowed mother. She wrote petition after petition asking the king for a settled allowance, and when she pressed too hard, she was banished to Ramsgate, a fishing port turned seaside resort on the Kent coast. There, amid salt-scarred cottages and the cries of gulls, she tried to craft a respectable life. She hired tutors for young Augustus and took long walks along the chalk cliffs. Locals, sympathetic to her plight, began calling her the Duchess, no matter what London had decreed. In 1800, the wandering Duke came home. He and Augusta managed a cautious reconciliation to rented house in Mayfair. 9 months later, she had a daughter, Augusta Emma. At first, the prince accepted paternity, but family letters from the period hinted jealousy. He discovered correspondence between his wife and Lord Archibald. Convinced the child was not his, he left again, this time to Lisbon, citing ill health. He would never see Augusta Emma after her infancy. Now officially created Duke of Sussex, Augustus styled himself a progressive thinker. He hosted salons in Portugal for scientists and free thinkers, collected rare books, and campaigned from a distance for the abolition of the Test Acts that barred Jews from public office. He sent occasional guilt-tinged drafts to Augusta, but ignored her pleas to return. George III's patience also frayed. The Earl of Dunmore confronted the monarch over the treatment of his daughter and grandchildren. According to a note in the Royal Archives, the king broke out into a rage, calling them bastards. Bastards. The word echoed in aristocratic drawing rooms for months. Money remained Augusta's constant battle. In 1820, John Wade's expose, The Black Book, revealed that she had received large, unexplained payments drawn from colonial revenues earmarked for planters in Barbados. The implication was clear. Palace officials used those accounts to settle her debts while keeping the transactions off domestic ledgers that Parliament might inspect. The revelation embarrassed the Crown and rekindled outrage among reformers already angry about royal spending. Legal skirmishes multiplied. One suit forbade Augusta from displaying the royal coat of arms on her carriage door. Another forced her to strip her children of the styles prince and princess. She obeyed in public, yet clung to the titles among friends. In Ramsgate, citizens still tipped their hats and said, "Your Royal Highness," daring for London to contradict them. The town council later named a new road, Sussex Street, in her honour, a modest but permanent gesture of defiance. Augusta died on the 5th of March 1830, aged 69, after a short illness. She was buried in the parish church of St Lawrence in Thanet, with a simple stone that read only Augusta de Albany. The Kentish Chronicle noted that a surprisingly large crowd attended, many local fishermen who remembered her kindness to their families during hard winters. Augustus did not attend the funeral. He had been living openly since 1815 with Lady Cecilia Buggin, daughter of the Earl of Arran. She was 40 when they met, yet calm where Augusta had been fiery and patient with his bouts of melancholy. After Augusta's death, the Duke married Cecilia on the 2nd of May 1831 in a quiet ceremony at Great Cumberland Place. However, the Royal Marriages Act struck again. Because he still lacked sovereign consent, the union was void in law. Cecilia could not share his rank nor sit behind him at court, and when invitations arrived bearing on Lady Cecilia Sussex, Lord Chamberlain's clerks returned them unsigned. The Duke railed against the injustice. He argued that a man of 58 should not need permission, like a schoolboy asking leave to play. Yet he never obtained the King's signature, and only when his niece Victoria became Queen in 1837 did the atmosphere shift. She adored her bachelor uncle, who in her childhood had sneaked her forbidden storybooks and mechanical puzzles, and in gratitude she created Cecilia Duchess of Inverness in her own right in 1840, giving the couple a semblance of parity at last. Augustus spent his final years at Kensington Palace, sharing corridors with the young Queen and her growing brood. Visitors found his apartments crammed with telescopes, botanical specimens, and Hebrew grammars. He was president of the Royal Society for a time, championed vaccination, and campaigned to remove civil restrictions on Jews, actions that earned him the nickname the Liberal Prince. Yet bitterness lingered. He refused burial in the royal vaults at Windsor in his will because Augusta and Cecilia would both be barred. Instead, he chose Kensal Green Cemetery, opened in 1833 as a modern, non-sectarian resting place for Londoners of every rank. He died on the 21st of April 1843, aged 70, and was laid beneath a plain granite obelisk. Cecilia, finally recognised, walked behind the hearse, veil fluttering in a cold spring wind. Many features of the story invite comparison with the present Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Both men were younger sons who sought affection outside the narrow world of European royalty. Both women possessed experience, social, romantic, or professional, that unsettled courtiers accustomed to compliant brides. Both couples collided with rules designed to protect dynastic purity, yet felt those rules outdated. In the 18th century, the clash ended in annulments, exile, and bitterness. Today, the hope remains that lessons have been learned, that frank discussion and modern media scrutiny can prevent history, with its talent for grim repetition, from circling back to the same unhappy conclusion. For all his missteps, Augustus left behind more than scandal. He promoted science, spoke against slavery, and by insisting on burial among ordinary citizens, chipped at the notion that royals must live and die apart. Once lampooned as a schemer, Augusta Murray emerges in hindsight as a woman boxed in by laws designed to keep her silent. Both were products of the age, yet their imperfections make them vivid. Their tale, stretching from Roman cobbles to Kentish cliffs to a North London graveyard, reminds us that titles can be revoked, fortunes squandered, and reputations shredded, but human impulses for love, autonomy, and recognition persist, generation after generation. If you missed the opportunity at the start of this video, then here's your second chance. If you'd like to support the channel and find all my links, just scan the QR code on screen. It'll take you to Patreon, social media, and even my books. Every bit of support helps me keep making videos like this. Even a thumbs up or a comment on the video increases its chances of being seen by more people. I really appreciate you being here, so thanks for watching.